for us, along with the beautification committee. We had 42 houses participate, which is a nice first start, and hopefully more will have, next year we'll have a lot more. Our prize baskets went from the first year when we started to do them, a value of about $200. This year, each week, the minimum one was $800. The most expensive one was $1,200, filled with gifts and services all from our Crestwood businesses. So, a great incentive to vote on the trees and get people into our businesses. We had this year 12 new businesses join us. A couple of them were home-based businesses, which is an area that we're very interested in getting out and getting exposed to people. Because we've got some cool stuff here in Crestwood. So the main reason we're here tonight is to give out some awards and let you see what some of the businesses did to support the community. And Santa's going to help, and Mary's going to help here. So the first one on here, is there anybody here from Charmette? Oh, good. Come on up. Charmette won the People's Choice Award. Better day for you. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your work. Their tree was just gorgeous. It was worthy of a magazine cover. And I know pictures sometimes don't do them justice. They worked very hard, and it was gorgeous. Our second one is the Mayor's Choice. And
only because the Pope was standing here.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Sister Cynthia, can you come up, please? And if we can flip to the next slide. Go ahead. This is, I know it's a little difficult to see with the lights. These guys really worked. They designed this tree, they engineered it, and this is how they built it. And it was all books, and each one of the books you could put your name on and claim it afterwards. They gave the books away. How amazing is that for community integration? Thank you. Are you the one that designed it? Oh, are you sisters? Yeah. It was a lot of work. Do you know how many books were in there? 400 books to make that tree. So thank you for everything.
It was very nice. Thank you, sister. We'll do that. That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
A lot of our businesses put a lot of thought and a lot of energy into what they create. And we just want to give you a little sampling of what they do. Our next one is the Committee's Choice. Is Boardwalk here yet? No. Is anybody from ACE here yet? Not yet. Okay. I know Boardwalk closes at 7. They said it would be close to 7:15 when they got here. So we're just moving a little quicker than they are. How about Fairway? I know is here. Fairway Automotive. They had the best outdoor display. And I want to talk a little bit about Jason and Lindsay and their business. They are an amazing example for community support. Jason came to us. They started the tree, which, by the way, if I'm correct, 248 tires make that tree. That's a lot of work. And they took it a step further. They started a car show. And this year, the car show kind of boomeranged on us because of the beautiful weather. And we got a call from a guy, Jason's shaking his head, that said, we wanted to develop a Santa car cruise. And our idea of the car cruise was we were going to take Santa in a vintage car, a Willie's Jeepster, I believe, right? From City Hall to Fairway for the car show. And I get a call from a guy, and he said, we want to be a part of your car show, your car cruise. And I'm like, oh, that is so cool. It's a club called Cars and Coffee, which is the largest.
There's 3,500 members in St. Louis.
Yeah. I had no we're cruising. So we had, what, 40 some odd cars in the park cruise, including one that looked like a tank. We went through the neighborhoods. They stopped and gave candy to the children. We stopped at 2 parks. It was absolutely amazing. And we had 68 cars in the car show that day. So, and they want to come back to Crestwood. They loved our city. They participated in the fireworks in every aspect. The other thing we did, because it had grown so large, is we moved fireworks to St. Elizabeth at Humphrey, to the field. And it was our second traffic jam in Crestwood. Since the food truck race, the food truck event we had cars. Coles was packed, Schnucks was packed, City Hall was packed, St. Elizabeth, and people were parked up and down the streets. And I have to say the fireworks were equal to downtown's for 4th of July. They were amazing. So they won the Outdoor Display Award, and we were so excited to hear.
Jason and Lindsay, thank you so much for everything that you do. We know you've really rallied around the Christmas and Crestwood people and other businesses, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And we hear it's Jason's birthday tomorrow, so.
Birthday.
22. That's right. I think all our officers are gone, too. We had so many people show up that our officers actually led the car cruise through the neighborhood and participated in the car show because we needed help. So it was a lot of fun. And I think, oh, I feel bad that Boardwalk's not here. That kind of concludes. I just wanted to add one more thing, and maybe if they come in, we can get them their award if Boardwalk comes in. And that puts us back to the grand prize, which is, I hope you all saw it as you came in. I'm sorry? Westlake's not here yet. They did not know if they were going to make it because they only had 2 employees, and the manager is at a manager's meeting. Can we flip to our honorable mentions? Again, this was really difficult for us to make decisions. Here's some of the other trees we had. Homegrown trees. Looks like it was going to catapult. Jeanette Scott Farmers Insurance was adorable. It hung upside down. Neil's Pharmacy was made of pillboxes. Malone saluted all their patrons who have served in the armed forces. And each star had somebody's name on it, a family or one of their patrons. Look After Hair Care is actually a mannequin dressed as a tree. That was cool. Salon Uno, I wish we could have done a close-up on this one. It's filled with Barbie dolls. It was called The Way to the Star. And each Barbie doll's hair was copied in a different design from Salon Uno. Savers, every time they put a tree up for the last several years, somebody bought it. And then people would complain when they went in because they had nothing to vote on. So they decided to create a tree out of wrapping paper and different products that they have in the store. Spectrum Eyeglass Repair, they were very sorry. They're at the Blues game that they couldn't be here. All of theirs was made out of eyeglass parts. And some of them, if you haven't stopped by there, they make jewelry out of it also that's beautiful. Sherwin-Williams is a ladder with paint in the store at the top. Where these ideas come from is amazing. Brady Huska had a real popular tree. Blues were doing so good, everything about it was Blues memorabilia. I think we have one more slide of honorary mentions. State Farm, Trail Lodge Tea, that's one of our home-based businesses. We were so happy to have them. They make wonderful teas, and around the base of her tree she had samplings that people could take of her products. Studio Anew, another one that could have been on a magazine cover. It was just stunning. A new business, they just celebrated their first anniversary. Watson Dental Associates, their whole lobby or inside waiting room was done in Whoville. That was very cute. Very friendly place to take your children to a dentist. And Yoklor, like many of our businesses, gave back. And the theme of theirs was to take an ornament, and it had a baby item on it, and bring it back, and they collected a lot of things for the Crisis Nursery. So we have a lot of heart here in Crestwood. And then now the grand prize. Our grand prize is worth over $3,100 this year, filled with goods from various businesses, goods and services. There's a list of who contributed. And Joe was our week 2 basket winner. He went to Applebee's for lunch or dinner, voted on the tree, and we pulled his name. He heard about the grand prize and decided to participate. Paid off, right? He saw 71 of the business trees, and then luckily he won. So congratulations.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say just 2 more things. Our Christmas in Crestwood it's an amazing event, and it's something that is truly a group effort. And I know several of our volunteers are here tonight, and I wondered if they'd please stand up. This is part of who makes it happen. Not at all least, we have a volunteer who joined us last year who has changed the way people can find us and helped us get on the map. And Lynn, who is here with her camera, put us on Facebook. She visited every business. And not only did she visit the business, she interviewed them, talked to them about what they sell and what they do, posted on Facebook not just a picture of their tree, about what kind of Christmas gifts you could find there, about what kind of services they offer. That is a tremendous amount of time to give, and we're so grateful that you put us on the map. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We should be taking, do you have a camera? We should take a picture of Lynn instead of Lynn taking a picture of us right now. Oh, here comes Mary. Where's your camera? Right there. Lynn did what we only dreamed of doing. One photographer to another.
I'm not the one I'm used to. Hopefully, not, I mean, you can get it fuzzy. Okay, well, here, she got some on her phone. Oh, no, you look good.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you so much.
And
We really appreciate
next year's
everything
in the
you've done.
works.
We appreciate all of this. And I know that you've already started your planning for next year, so thanks again. Okay, that concludes our presentation of communications and appointments. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. I'll open the first public hearing, which is on the rezoning of 8659 Party Lane from an R4 7,500 square foot residential to M1 light industrial. Is there any representative here today from MSD? Yes, sir. If you care to step up to the podium, please. In case the board has any questions for you.
Certainly.
Okay. I'll open it up to the board. If there's anyone on the board that would like to address this gentleman regarding these. Alderman Miguel.
I really just a question.
Pull your microphone over, please.
Really a question for the board. There's 2 public hearings here that are really hand in glove. And I was going to ask if in this public hearing the board would be willing to take hearing on both issues because they are so interrelated, or as perhaps a second option, consider opening both public hearings at the same, have both hearings open at the same time. So I find it difficult to speak to one without being able to reference or make reference to the other. So whichever.
I'm not sure we can take them in, I'm not sure we can take them together other than, unless the city attorney has a position on that, but they are individual properties, and so they have to be zoned individually.
Well, would the board consider hearing references to both properties during this one hearing?
Is that a motion or a request? Or?
That's a request.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have any objections to hearing both at the same time? Okay, I see no objections, so I'll accept that as a motion. And do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to conduct both public hearings at the same time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, so I'll also open the public hearing on the rezoning of 8657 Party Lane from R4 7,500 square foot residential to M1 light industrial. Okay. All right, any other comments from the board? I see no lights. Anyone on this side care to speak on these two issues? I see no hands. Anyone on this side care to speak on these two issues? Yes, sir. Would you please approach the podium and give us your, you can sit down for a second, sir. Please give us your name and your address for the record.
It's Randy Strady, 8680 Party Lane. And I guess I'll do an abbreviated one because I had some slides, but I'm told we're not going to be able to use those this evening. But I oppose these two rezonings because I feel that this project that has apparently been going on for quite a while, there was a public hearing about a year and a half ago. And I got notice a week before the meeting, and in digging into it, I found out that the meeting was actually held after the contract was already signed between MSD and the city. So I questioned, when did we have an opportunity to voice our opinion? And I'll come back to that in a little bit. I live basically catty corner across the street from one of the lots and catty corner from the other one, catty corner from where these two tanks will be. And my house has already experienced significant value loss because if I try to sell it now, I have to disclose that. And that's going to be a huge financial hit on me. There are other properties in the area, including the two next to me, that are in a similar situation that were made buyout offers, and I was never made a buyout offer. And it really does make a change to the makeup of the neighborhood that I bought into. First of all, the meeting again that was held, I was not able to attend because it was 1 week notice that I got, even though the letter was dated quite a bit earlier. There are residents here that could probably say that the tone at that meeting was it was presented that this is happening. There wasn't a lot of interactivity, and that was how it was presented. Recently, there was some similar ones in University City, and apparently there was a second one, and the design changed as a result of that. And I questioned, where did we get our chance to do any kind of feedback, or get any feedback, or get any input into this? It seemed like it was already happened. The term several people have used with me is the train has already left the station. There is an agreement that the city, in the agreement the city signed, it does say that they will cooperate and help MSD in zoning regulations, variances, and those kinds of things for the use of the public works department property that you were exchanging. That did not, in my opinion, and the city attorney could certainly make an opinion on this, that did not extend to helping with any additional properties outside of that property. Okay, that includes the two that are being rezoned here. I also want to clarify, because I've heard from several people that, these are going to store rainwater. To clarify, these are going to store sewer. 3 trunk lines come in that are bigger than the one that goes out, and when it rains, rainwater gets into the sewer, and then it causes it now to overfill into Crestwood Creek. And so these tanks will hold that excess and then drain back down. But just to clarify, it is storing sewer. It is probably watered down sewer, but it is the same thing that's being dumped into Crestwood Creek now. So since I was unable to attend the meeting, MSD did come to my house, do the presentation, and said they were going to come back and make me an offer on my house. They sent out an appraiser. They had the real estate contact me. And then they chose, after a couple of months, that no, they were not going to make me an offer. But if you're familiar with this scenario, the house, the tank, one of the tanks is literally going to be catty-cornered from me. I had said before 160 feet, MSD has clarified 210. I think I was looking at the road, not the house. But again, 210 feet, that is the distance between the two benches on a football field. You're sitting and you're looking over at the other team. That is not very far for a tank that's going to be 150 feet wide, two tanks, and 30 to 45 feet tall. And there's going to be two of them. When they tear down the two houses next to me, I will have a clear view of both of those tanks from all areas of my yard, including my backyard and my back patio. Okay, so they've also said, well, we drew the property line straight across. Well, if you draw the property line straight across, it actually encompasses my driveway. It doesn't encompass my property. They said, well, we're going to leave it better than it is today. You're looking at the City Public Works Department. Well, again, if you saw the pictures, you don't see the City Public Works Department. I've never had an issue living there. But that same would apply to the houses next to me that they purchased. They also were looking at the City Public Works Department, so that's not a defense either. So again, I feel like I've not been given a sustainable or a non-subjective reason why my house was not selected for a buyout. And some people I've talked to have been very surprised that I wasn't included in the buyout. I feel that they said, well, they buy mine, they set a precedent. I think the precedent's already been set. If you look at any aerial photos, our three houses, mine and the two that were purchased, are very close together. But then there's a large open area and with mature growth trees, and the next house is quite a ways away. So I think that if there was a precedent set, it should have included my house, not stop where it did with really no justification. And the other thing too is many of the drawings, I saw one today that was a little bit better, showed mature, but most of the drawings were for mature growth landscape. That's many years. So I've got 3 or 4 years of construction. I live at home. I live at home. I work at home. 3 or 4 years of construction I have to endure, in addition to these houses being demolished around me and that one being moved and having to fill the lot over there. And it's not what I bought into. I used to tell my friends, I said, I got a little bit of country in the city. I said, I've got the Grant Trail behind me, at the Clydesdale at the end of the road, and I've got the giant city park across the street from me behind those houses. And that's not what it's going to be like at all. Now I'm going to have people come to my house, drive in and say, oh, what are those two giant tanks? And I have to say, oh, those are sewer storage tanks. Okay. So again, it has really changed the makeup of the neighborhood, the neighbors and that type of stuff. So that's the abbreviated version.
So do you have a request of this board, or was there were you just basically wanting us to know about your situation?
My request is that you deny the rezoning of those two lots across from me, because it's going to open up potentially commercial development in the future, but furthermore, it allows for the purchase or the putting of that one large tank on the lot catty corner for me and some other equipment on the lot directly across from me back behind.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any member of the board have any questions for Mr. Strode?
Passing around.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. I guess the question I would have of the gentleman from MSD, and are these two lots actually being built on, the ones that we're being asked to rezone here this evening?
The one lot that's triangular in shape, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact address of each one.
Okay, well, these two that we're being asked to rezone this evening, are they two lots that the tanks will be built on? So is there a urgency to?
One lot will have a partial, just a piece of the tank on it. Yes.
Okay.
The other lot, no.
Okay. The other one's more of a buffer.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Alderman, maybe?
A question for the representative from MSD. Is it correct that the MSD Board of Trustees is considering an action at their February 15th meeting to potentially extend an offer to Mr. Strady, who just spoke for his home?
I know these circumstances are being presented to the MSD board. I don't know exactly what is being presented. Those are things that happen above my level. But yes, this whole situation is being presented to the MSD board.
Okay. And would it be fair to say then, is after the date of February the 15th, the situation between MSD and Mr. Strady may or may not be resolved depending on what happens at that Board of Trustee meeting?
That is correct.
Okay. That's the only question I have for right now. If there's other members of the public that are here
Well,
tonight.
I've got two other lights from home.
Okay, that's all I have for right now then.
Alderman Statter?
Can you please clarify for us, will these tanks store clean stormwater or will there be sewage being stored?
Yeah, so the function of these tanks, actually Mr. Strody alluded to it, we have a situation there where we have a 54-inch, a 36-inch, and a 24-inch sewers. These are trunk sanitary sewers. They then connect to a 36-inch sanitary sewer. As you don't need to be a hydraulics expert to realize that's going to be a problem. And so there's also an overflow there. That overflow directs that wastewater during a surcharge condition. Surcharge condition happens during a rain event. Rainwater is getting into our sewers, surcharges. Now this rainwater is actually relatively clean. It's very dilute wastewater, okay? But it's still being discharged into the creeks. And this is something we have to alleviate. We have to stop it from happening. So that's the role of these tanks. Instead of going into the creek, they are now going to go, it is going to be a dilute wastewater that we will be storing there temporarily. Once the rain event subsides and our system surcharging condition alleviates, then we start discharging that wastewater back into the collection system. So it can be housed in there. We actually have, during the largest type of a rain event that you could conceive, like a hurricane like or something comes through, and we fill these things up because they're very full on. We anticipate 24 hours is the maximum storage event. Then we would discharge it. And then we do collect rainwater from the site. We're going to have a cistern there with pumps, and we're going to use the rainwater to wash down the inside of these tanks and the pump station system. Conclusion, so that that's how it's going to function.
Do you have a similar system set up anywhere in St. Louis?
Absolutely.
I'm curious, is there odor involved in this?
There is odor involved in this. We have odor control systems, so now I'm trying to figure out how to exactly explain this. We have odor control systems on here. They generally don't run because they're generally not needed. So it's kind of funny, because it's a dilute system, because they happen during rain events, believe it or not, during a rain event, the odor actually gets kind of washed down in the rain event. So we've realized we've never had a complaint, not a single one. And we've had several, one in place for about 8 or 9 years now, and the other one is just getting online. So we do have them online, but we do have an odor control system that we would certainly run if it's needed.
So you've never had a complaint, which is great. So the one that's been running for 8 or 9 years, how close is the closest residence to that?
I want to say it's about 400 feet.
So about double the distance. Okay.
So
Thank
more
you.
than likely we may need to run. We'll have to just wait and see.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Mr. Simpson?
I just had a related question that Alderman Statter made me think of. These rain events that necessitate the use of these tanks, about how many on average do you have per year?
Do you know that one, Jim?
I think it was on the order of 1 a month, something like that.
1 a month?
Definitely under 20.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman McGill?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have some pictures that I'd like to display on the screen if Mr. Simpson could accommodate me, please. these are pictures that I took over the weekend, and I just kind of want to go through them. I expect that everybody here on the board has had an opportunity to drive by the area in question, but thank you. I would also point out that there's a good graphic on the handout or the materials for today's presentation or public hearing on page 55 that shows all of the properties and has the addresses of the properties in question. But the best map that I've seen is the map that we received today from, forwarded to us by Alderman Maybe, that is in color, and it has a good, it also shows each of the properties in question with the addresses, and really gives a good view. Now, the first set of pictures is as you would be going north on Party Lane, driving towards Watson Road. Okay? And it surprised me, and you can see it on the maps that in our materials for this evening, that this is the property on 8711 Party Lane. It's on, so this, as you're driving north, this would be on the west. And this property, based on the dimensions in some other charts, is approximately located approximately 400 feet from that tank, from the southernmost of the two tanks. But that's twice the distance from the tank to Mr. Strode's house, which one of the handouts that we received shows the distance to Mr. Strode's property at 210 feet. So I'm curious, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Stephen Roberts.
Stephen, Mr. Roberts. Can you tell me why MSD decided to make an offer to 8711?
I wish I could comment on that. I will say I am a project manager who is responsible for doing the design of the tank.
Okay.
And there are decisions made from our right-of-way group, and unfortunately a representative from our right-of-way group is not here, about who they make offers to in terms of a buyout. I can tell you that if a property is within the construction influence of our tank, we would certainly need, that would be in my role saying, here's what we need to build our tanks. Then there are certain properties that are also purchased or made offers to based on just proximity to the tank and that they may have be negatively impacted by it. And those are the folks our right-of-way group ends up making offers to.
Well,
so I'm sorry, I cannot.
Okay. So I was surprised to learn just from these handouts and stuff that this property was offered a buyout because of its distance from the tanks. Especially when I hear from Mr. Strode that his property, which is within very close proximity, has not received an offer. And that's a beautiful brick house.
I will say, we were going to do some work in that backyard. Remember, we were going to have to extend the trunk sewer into the backyard. We were going to have to put some monitoring equipment in this person's backyard. However, we've switched the design of our trunk sewer in some of the facilities. So I don't know if this offer was perhaps made earlier in our design process. It might have been because this property was also going to be influenced by construction. Now that I had to sit here and think of the history of our project, and that, I remember that house, we were going to have to put some monitoring equipment in the backyard.
Okay.
So that might have been an influence on the property acquisition there.
So now that you have that property and it's no longer a major factor or a factor in your construction, what are your plans for this property?
I would see no need to acquire that property.
So you would put this back on the market then? Is that what you would do?
I would not acquire that property myself.
You
It
yourself?
would not be necessary for the construction of our tank.
So would it be fair to say, to expect to see that house put back on the market?
No, I'm sorry, is that one that we actually did acquire? I don't think
Yes.
we acquired that property.
Yeah, you did.
We did.
The people have moved. I learned that over the weekend.
They did.
They moved. In fact, I might have, without knowing it, witnessed their going away party.
Oh, really?
I wasn't invited.
I wasn't afraid.
Alderman Miguel, could you move forward, please?
Okay.
We're looking at one picture here. We need to get going with that.
Well, anyway, this is the most extreme property that you
I was not even
purchased.
aware, again, those are right-of-way group acquires these
Okay,
properties.
so let me move forward. Now,
I might be able to do it all from here. How's that?
okay.
Yeah, that's the vacant parcel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they did
Oh, it
acquire
did
the
work.
property.
Yeah, I can do this now, so that one's not really.
Why they didn't-
So, as we drive down the street going north, this is the next property. This is a vacant lot. It's owned by Mr. Batch, who also owns the historic Arban House. And it was my impression initially that this property, or that the Arban House was going to be moved to this lot. And again, from reading the materials that we received here, well, I learned that that's really not what's happening. So let's continue to move north. Now here's the next property down the road, and an offer was made to these people, and I understand they turned it down. They decided to stay. So we can move forward, and there's a front view of that house. So those people have decided that they would stay there. The next house, looking again a little further down the road, is a house that you purchased, and it's been stripped. I understand that the owner was told to take whatever he could, whatever he wanted, and so he took the siding as well as the inside, the outside as well as the inside. So again, we're moving down the road here towards the tanks. And here's the Arban House, and you've made arrangements, struck an agreement. No, please stay there for a second. Between the two houses, you can see the Public Works facility. Actually, it's kind of hard to see, but that's kind of looking at it. I took the pictures from my car from the window, but pretty much in line with what Mr. Strader would be looking at. But that house now is not going to that empty lot up the road. That house is going to the house that we just, that's been torn down. So now, that house has been there for about 10 years. It's been boarded up, I guess. But it's basically been an eyesore for the last 10 years since it got moved. And now what's being proposed by MSD is to move it right in front of Mr. Strode's house.
Now, that had to do with the negotiation with Mr. Batch.
Yeah, and that speaks to the rezoning here, because we're being asked to rezone this from residential, or from industrial to residential, and back from residential to industrial and back to residential. Not all tonight, but that's the ultimate plan.
That is correct.
So, I mean, it's kind of like you want your cake and you want to eat it too, but you want to make Mr. Strode pay for it. But yeah, I understand, and I'm not saying it's a bad plan. It's a great plan, especially for Mr. Batch, I guess. And it reduces your cost of moving it for sure, because you're just moving it next door.
You want to stay in that area, I guess. Sure. I am not sure of everything that went on with those negotiations.
So this property here, including the house, well, okay. Let's move on now, and now I've turned around and I am now driving south. And here we're looking at the pump company and the house, which is directly across, which would be directly across from the pump, or from your tanks.
That's correct.
And we can move to the next slide. There are two houses here that have been purchased. That's the first one. And there's the second one. And
MSD owns those two houses.
And MSD now owns both those houses. And again, I would ask the same question. Since the zoning isn't going to change, are you planning to resell those houses now? Or are you planning, had some other plans for that?
My understanding is those houses will be level, and then MSD will likely sell those properties on the open market.
All right. Okay. If you would go to the next slide. Thank you. Did we skip a slide there, I thought? Okay, I thought I had a better, I thought I had a picture showing this house, in closer proximity to Mr. Well, the separation of the two houses is about the same as the distance from, I guess on the right you can see Mr. Strode's house just to the right there. So, anyway, that's my picture show for tonight. But basically, you've made buyout offers to everyone in the neighborhood except for Mr. Strode. So to me, it's really a question of fairness here. And I would ask, I believe in fairness to Mrs. Strode that MSD needs to come to some sort of type of agreement with him. So those are my comments, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Honor. So getting back to what Alderman Miguel said, the two houses that are on the east side of Party Lane that are to the north or next door to Mr. Strode's house, those have been acquired, they're going to be torn down, and
the ones next door.
Right, they'll be sold.
That is correct.
And is there a sense on what type of use would go there? Would it be industrial? Would it be residential? Probably, I would imagine, unlikely residential. I imagine whoever would buy those properties would probably come back and want a zoning change to industrial at some point.
That is
possible. We just don't know at this point. But anyway, the character of the neighborhood is, certainly changing. Mm-hmm. One of the words you used, and I appreciate everything you've said so far.
Sure.
That the buyouts and things like that kind of happen within the construction influence, and
that's correct.
And that all makes sense. One of the things that concerns me is the impact of the possible odor. So Strode's house is on the east side or downwind from any odor potential of the new facility, and so so we're 200 feet closer than the other project you referenced that basically hasn't had any problems over the last 8 years, and it's 400 feet away. So I would be concerned about the impact of the neighborhood, going due east from the facility, and so I think that's kind of in the construction influence, if you ask me, because I think odor would be part of that definition. Certainly there's a lot of changes happening. Why his house was not included in a buyout offer is kind of mind-boggling. I'm glad you're here tonight. I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't a representative from the right-of-way group. I think that would be really helpful to have more inside the comments, and so that is what it is. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Alderman Wally.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with the sentiments of the other aldermen, but a couple of questions. The other project that you referenced, where is that at? Is that the St. Anne project?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you referenced, again, the closest of the nearest house is 400 feet away. So I'm assuming MSC purchased those properties within that territory, right?
That's correct.
Have they decided to build houses back on those properties, or is it just clear land? That 400 feet?
Clear land up to this day.
Okay, thank you. As a final rendering of what the structure will look like in regards to the tanks?
Oh, yes. We have renderings of
Okay.
the tank.
Does the rendering look similar to what is at St. Anne?
No.
Okay.
Similar in some respects. St. Anne, if you're familiar with that tank, it's a very dramatic looking tank, almost too much so, at least we felt. It looks almost like a building, if you will. We're using the same types of tanks. We think they're the best looking tank. It's got like a stucco finish.
Right.
And but we're still doing some architectural relief on there, some columns, and then you have like around the top you put in this, it almost looks like a crown molding, if you will, to give it some nice look to it. But we're not going with the window look anymore.
Well, that's where my concern is, because again, I'm looking at the pictures now that you have of St. Anne, and it looks like more of an office building. The aesthetics of that is a different appearance that likely what you're going to propose regarding the rendering look. So again, I do recommend that you may take another look, because some of the residents here, when they see a tank, we turn off the light. Now, when I look at this project in St. Anne, it looks like an office building. It doesn't look like it's a tank. And that's where my concern is, and that's why, again, I think, regards to the presentation I had, thank you for coming out. I think the other alderman has made some references regards to the right-of-way group has not done their due diligence. So at this point, again, I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I know where my vote's going to be tonight regards to the public hearing tonight.
We did have a aesthetic committee review. I don't know if you were aware of that, where we were asking these kinds of questions of local residents. So we settled in on that look. Again, aesthetics a lot of time.
But during those meetings, though, did you show them a picture of the St. Anne facility?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I'll wait for those. I may want to review those minutes. Thank you.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Very quickly, appreciate you coming this evening. I realize that you're taking the brunt of this and that you're not the individual that's responsible for this, but I as well am quite alarmed by more information I'm hearing this evening. Particularly that for whatever reason, one individual who is left out when there's parcels that are a lot further away that were made offers, and I realized maybe plans had changed, but it just doesn't seem very well thought out. And then I'm concerned as well because, we hear that the building originally, I think when this whole idea of switching facilities was brought forward, I was under the impression that the building wouldn't look like a tank facility, that it would be made to look aesthetically pleasing all along. But now I'm finding out that it may look like a tank facility, which I understand to an extent. It's going to look like it's going to have a fence around it. It's going to be sectioned off. There's things that obviously, you're going to know what it is, but I am a little concerned about the aesthetic. the look of the building. I would encourage to make this look, to keep the idea of where it's located in the design process, to make sure that it remains and keeps the neighborhood look as much as possible. One other thing I'll add is, in Crestwood, we are a smaller community and we're a neighborly community. I think it's just very concerning that it doesn't appear that the neighborhood was really, you're going to become part of our neighborhood. You're going to become a neighbor. And I don't think you all have been very neighborly when it comes to some of the things that I've been learning in the last couple of weeks. And we're going to welcome you into our neighborhood. We expect you to be neighborly. And that's all the comments I have. So.
Okay. Alderman, maybe?
I guess just as an additional matter, if city staff could circulate the minutes and renderings we have, I think Alderman Wallach requested it, but I think it'd probably be helpful for everyone to see the aesthetic committee meeting minutes and renderings. There were, you might have it in front of you, Mr. Roberts, 3, 4, 5 meetings where property owners further down RD were invited. Mr. Gillum was there. I was on the committee, and then there's a ring of homes in Ward 1. You can see them on some of the renderings. The name of that street is escaping me. Thank you. That overlook the facility, and so a lot of those residents, there's a pretty healthy buffer. They're certainly not 200 feet away, but they do have their backyard viewing this facility, so quite a few of those residents weighed in as well. We looked at a lot of different tank designs, and while there were a minority of individuals that the St. Anne tank design appealed to, the thought was that one almost grabs your eye, perhaps in a positive way, maybe in a negative way, but you notice that it looks like a futuristic office building, whereas the thought was this is, there's quite a few trees and woods on Graveway Creek there when you're viewing it from the Ward 1 side, and there's going to be some plantings and things like that, and the thought was to go more of an earth innocuous color, and to the extent you can hide or try to make 45-foot tall tanks blend in, that was the goal. So I did think the committee made some good work on the appearance of these tanks. I think MSD has, for the most part, done a good job trying to work with some of these surrounding property owners. We're obviously having to look at a lot of factors when we consider a rezoning request, but certainly it shocks the conscience with the way Mr. Strode's property has been treated, and I think that is one of the factors we need to look at. And so I don't think we can really complete our full due diligence on this request until after we know how your Board of Trustees is going to resolve that situation. And so I would make a motion that we hold open the public hearing and postpone this matter to our meeting of February the 27th. And I would make that request as to the rezoning request for both lots.
We have a motion and a second to hold the public hearing open until the February 27th Board of Aldermen meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay. And we will hold the meeting open until 27th, and hopefully by that time we'll have some response from MSD regarding Mr. Shirley's property. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not first. Sorry. Alderman Reed.
You have the floor.
Okay. Alderman Miguel.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Roberts for coming this evening.
I appreciate your time.
As I try to point out, to me it's an issue of fairness. And the issue is further compounded. If you look on page 55, you see where the RVN house is going to be relocated. And maybe this is another issue for the board at another date, but the RVN house has been in its current location for about 10 years, and it's, I think it's been painted. I'm not sure if it's been completely painted because it occurred over a period of time. But if you look at page 55, you can see where that RBN house is going to be moved. And Mr. Strode is going to be looking at that eyesore every time he goes out his front door. And it's been an eyesore for the last 10 years, and there's really no reason to believe that that anything will change in its appearance. So, again, I thank you for coming here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Appreciate it. Okay, so that will move that open public hearing until the 27th of February. Therefore, there'll be no closing of the public hearing. There'll be no reading of the ordinances. Okay, so we will move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, and City Administrators' reports and/or comments. Alderman Breeding?
No report, Your Honor.
Alderman Waller?
I do have a report. I did attend the Park Board meeting on January the 16th. A couple of things to mention on it. During that Parks Board meeting, the local chapter of Sons of American Revolution would like to install some markers at the Sappington Cemetery. We became aware that actually there are 3 veterans from the Revolutionary War veterans there, so they will install markers there, and we approved of them to install the markers at that facility. We did discuss maybe a new change with regards to the brochure for the Parks and Rec, and the new brochure name is going to be Crestwood Rec Connect, and Rec Connect is REC then Connect. So you'll see that name change in the near future, and actually at the next brochure if it comes out. The last thing we talked about too was maybe some change in the hours as it relates to the aquatic center. Eileen has done her due diligence in regards to the amount of hours of operation there is there at the facility. Presently, it's open from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Discussion was whether to eliminate the hours of operation from Sunday through Thursday from 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock. There just wasn't that much activity in regards to the pool, so the board would make that recommendation to reduce the amount of time from Sunday through Thursday until 7 o'clock. That will allow actually from that time forward to have other activities, after hour activities for some of the that are planned. So that's going to be before the board sometime in the near future. There is cost savings in regards to that, roughly around $8,200 of cost savings on the contract for their pool. The other things I mentioned is some events that are coming up forward. New programs for the spring and summer is going to be a boot camp class, Zumba parties, Zumba, I'm sorry. And they are in negotiations with Monster Sports to offer sand volleyball and kickball. Along with that, besides the aquatic camp, there's going to be new programs, the stand-up paddleboard class, and that's actually going to take place at the quarry, and also the aqua Zumba will be throughout the summer. And that's all I have. I will say that, again, there are some improvements to the community center if you haven't been there. There's a new floor in the fitness center. They actually moved some of the equipment around. It's more ADA accessible. It really is, it looks nice, as well as the HVAC system is now placed at the multi-purpose room. That's it.
Alderman Stetter?
No report, but a very quick comment. Boy Scout Troop 580 out of Long Elementary asked me to extend their sincere thanks to Mayor Roby for coming out and emceeing their fundraiser trivia night last weekend. It was a great success. He did a fantastic job.
That was a lot of fun. A good time. Thank you. Alderman Sharpman?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We did have a police board meeting last night. Despite what you hear about what seems like a recent crime wave, that's actually not the case. Crime is it's still very low in Crestwood at in fact almost an all-time low, but just because there's a few incidents that do make headlines, that we do remain a very safe community. So I want to remind everyone that. With the upcoming changes, I just want to take the opportunity to, again, thank Chief Armaldi for all his work and everything he's done for this community in his career and his service. And with that, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Maybe.
Yes, Your Honor, there was an Economic Development Commission meeting last night. Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Anderson, Alderman Charbonneau, myself were in attendance. There was a presentation from PGAV concerning the future of retail, talking about some of the really kind of disruptive forces taking place in the marketplace right now. It was an interesting presentation, a lot of good discussion that followed. And then the commission continued its work on updating Crestwood's economic development strategy. The city planner and the commission have been putting in a lot of work on that document. It's coming along. And I'm happy to hear about all the new Park and Recs programs. I think a lot of the leagues of kickball in South County and Mid County especially are usually filling up. So I think that'll be hopefully successful for the city. So that's great to see that's all happening. That's all I have.
Okay. Alderman Miguel.
No report.
Alderman Anderson.
No report.
Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you. Just piggybacking on what Alderman Maybe said, I attended the Economic Development Commission meeting last night, and the presentation by PJV on retail was interesting. I'm not sure, is that on our website? Do you know?
I'm looking at it. Not
Yeah,
yet, no.
not yet, okay. Anyway, it's interesting. One of the things that was not in this presentation, was he had a handout. It was a handout of a Wall Street Journal article, which I thought was pretty interesting. It was dated December 16th of 2017. And kind of piggybacks on what the potential for our, what the mall might look like if it's done right. And what this retailer has done in, outside Seattle is create a real thriving, amazing mall. And the article talks about what they do. And a lot of it is deals with programming, you know, really creating a town center within a mall. And they have parades, and they have artificial snow come down at Christmas time, and they have bands and music and art festivals, and it's pretty amazing. It sort of reminds me of the food truck event we had, when demolition was about to get underway. And I think we have an opportunity to really do that. PJV said that one of the questions from the commission was, are we in an inferior position because we're not on an interstate? And John B. Brent Cagliani said, well, the interstate really is a fixation of the big box user. Really people they'll drive to a destination. And I think our location, which was a proven destination for 50 years, has that potential. So I'm excited. I think we have a chance to make a town center. I think a lot of it's going to depend upon who manages it, and the use of the site plan, obviously. But I think there's an opportunity to do something. There's some examples out there. The presentation, if you look at his presentation, it's really Amazon's going to kill retail and we're dead. But that's really not the case. And I encourage you to take a look at the Wall Street Journal. I know Alderman Miguel will look at it tonight probably. But it's interesting. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson.
Yes, the Board of Aldermen's going to be meeting for a work session, as you all probably remember, this Saturday, the 27th, here at the Chambers at 9 a.m., so that we can go over the short-term and long-term priorities for the city. That's all I have.
Okay. City Attorney?
Lisa sends her regards. She's under the weather. Hopes to be rejoining us all soon. So.
Okay, great. And I guess the only thing was the newsletter. When will it be going out?
The restarted city newsletter was sent to the printer last week. We got first batch of issues back that the city is going to have locally, and we'll make those available at the government center and at the community center for anyone who is just passing through to obtain on February 1st. And they should be hitting resident mailboxes that first week and a half in February.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten a call from an individual who had been with the White Cliff Summer Playhouse, and the question came up regarding the stage and the fact that it's no longer usable. And I guess the city's we're not going to replace that. And so the question is, are we abandoning or disbanding the White Cliff Summer Playhouse and no longer going to have that? Can you address that, Mr. Gillum?
We're just looking at alternatives. We're thinking about moving it indoors. We had a meeting with Sandy and Albrook last night, and they even offered to build a new stage with, look into the opportunity to build a new stage with their the people that they know. So we're trying to make it happen. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Okay.
All right, we've already got the programs and the dates set for performances.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Alderman, maybe did you have something else?
Just briefly, I'm glad to hear there's conversations ongoing. That program's been going on for a while. It'd be a shame to close it down. And I feel like there was some emails circulated. It was a while ago, year and a half ago, when I guess the deficiencies and the unsafeness of our current stage kind of came to light. But I feel like there was a lot of portable stage companies and equipment that we could look into, and if with 90 cities in the county, surely someone has a stage we could borrow for free or a small cost perhaps.
And there stages are available for rent. We typically have a dance recital that rents a stage and has it indoors, so that's kind of the direction we were looking at.
Okay, glad to hear it. Thanks.
I think if I'm not mistaken, Sunset Hills recently purchased the old stage that we used to use that was at the counties, the metal stage.
I actually called the director, Gerald, at Sunset Hills, and they said their stage that they had actually blew away in the tornado. So they got a portable stage, it's a mobile stage, and it's not large enough for our performance. So
Okay.
I did check in on that.
Okay. I think we've used it for bands and things in the past year, so I didn't know whether that was an option. Okay, thank you. Nothing further. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Individuals wishing to address the board on any item that's on or not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you would please limit your comments to 5 minutes per person, we would appreciate it. Okay, we'll start over here. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Tom Batch, 8710 Party Lane. Do a little clarification here on MSD. They have negotiated with me by threat of eminent domain, and they have taken the Sappington house through that threat. They have never negotiated with any of my other properties.
Is that the white?
That's the White House that was moved down there, right. So, it was not voluntary. It was a court date, and we're going to take it, and this is what we're going to pay you. So we have reached an agreement there, but they have never given me an offer on any of my other properties that are affected by this. So Randy included, and Jeff Winkler, who decided not to move, is affected also monetarily. The property value is definitely going to go down. I also negotiated the 8711 property, which is going to be tore down. I will own the lot and the garage. They said it's in the floodplain, even though it's never flooded in 60 years that I've been there. They claim it's in the floodplain. So they cannot sell a house that's in the floodplain according to MSDA. And the reason they haven't given Randy an offer is because I built that house for Randy, or actually built it and sold it to him. And it's too nice of a house. They don't want to spend $500,000. And that's why. And I own property up and down that street, and they haven't given me an offer on any of them. Just the two pieces they needed for this project, which that was used with eminent domain. So if you think they're negotiating in good faith, you better think twice. They don't care about anything. Those two small lots next to Randy's house, I have got in writing from MSD in my contract that they will donate those to the city of Crestwood to block the street off and put a cul-de-sac in there. Now, they were told, they went to the administration, and we know who that is, and they said they're not interested in blocking off Party Lane. They would rather see it as a thoroughfare instead of using Grant Road. Now, they will donate it, and also they will probably pay for it. I talked to Brad last week, and he said they need to get that in their design so they can, when they put their bid up, they can all have it ready to go.
So you're talking about two properties, Mr. Batts, that are next to where?
Next to Randy's.
Next to
There's
Randy's.
the two small houses that were illegally built
Okay.
50 years ago,
Okay.
around 50-foot wide lots.
Okay.
So it was never, but that was right when the city was starting up, nobody paid attention. So they will donate that ground for a cul-de-sac, and that was their request originally when they came to the city, behind closed doors, before there was anyone even knew about it. They mentioned to let's block the street off, and the city administration said, no, we're not interested in that. So I don't know who the Gestapo is, but obviously the board hasn't heard that, and the residents did not hear it for a long time. Because this project's been going on for years, behind
I don't
closed
know how
doors.
that would work out with Weir plumbing, Weir pumps, because I see trucks coming in and out of there all the time.
First off, the street has no trucks allowed. And we don't have a problem with weird trucks because they abide by that. It's all the cut-through traffic. We get trash delivery 4 or 5 times a week, even though they only pick up once. We get 7-Up trucks, we get Pepsi trucks, we get delivery trucks, we get semi-trucks. You know.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
no
probably trucks coming in and out of there that are going to our public works garage too.
Well, dump trucks too.
Product, materials, whatever.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't, Grant Road's not even supposed to be for trucks either, so I don't know if they get lost or what they do, but they use it as a thoroughfare. So, that, in the Arbin House, I am going to move at this point. I've negotiated the lot, which was the 86, 87, to move it there, because the cost of moving it far it's not worth it again. So, that kind of gives you an idea, but that's what's going to, I will be presenting something to the board in the near future on blocking off the street and getting it back to Party Lane the way it used to be. When I was a kid, Party Lane did not go through. There was a railroad trestle that went through there, went to the quarry and up to the concrete plant. And all it's used for, 30 years ago when they redid the street, they said they could not block it off. And I asked, what were the reasons for that? Well, they said they didn't own Grant Road at the time, and the train tracks were still running. So both of them made sense. But today, Crestwood not only owns Grant Road, there's no train tracks anymore, and they've widened, they've spent millions of dollars widening and lowering and putting in a 2-lane bridge down at the little creek on Grant Road. So it's a beautiful street. And I drive down Party Lane, and I'll drive up, there'll be 10 cars, and I'll go up to Grant Road, and there'll be 1 car. People, for some reason, want to go through a residential area more so than going on a main thoroughfare. I don't understand it, but they do. It might save them 15 seconds. But, we want our lives back. We're sick of, we can't even open our front windows because of the traffic.
Okay.
So.
Well, if you need more time with regards to your presentation, please let us know so that we can put you on the agenda.
All right.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on this side? Yes, sir. State your name and address, sir.
Robert Miller, 8915 West Haven Court. Your Honor, I'm confused here. I was last night it doesn't take much to confuse me. But anyway, last night, as was alluded to, I was here at an Economic Development Commission meeting last evening where I was bashing urban street developers for doing nothing as far as getting this mall movement going on. And remember how they promised us once we get this $20 million TIF, we've got renters queued up waiting to get signed up to get in here. But anyway, I get an email here, Crestwood Mall redevelopment. So maybe Bob Burke has this place bugged. I'm concerned here, I'm confused. It's by some Brandon Eversgerd. I don't know who anybody, Brandon Eversgerd. Here, let let me read it here. All, meaning everyone, I guess, the universe, I just happened across, means I think I just happened to come across the latest and greatest from Urban Street, the developers of the Crestwood Mall site. I think it is no doubt a step in the right direction, but there are certain aspects of the proposal I'd like to see addressed. Mainly the amounts of parking. It should be mainly the amount of parking, but the site density, location of the park, I guess parking, and the lack of street frontage to Watson Road. As residents in the area, what are your reactions to this? And maybe this is spam or junk email, but has there been something just, anyone know Brandon Eversberg or Evers? No? Okay. So I guess I'll have to rack it up to spam.
Okay.
I'll give it to.
I think I had that sent to me earlier today.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. January 23rd in general.
There you go.
To 32 neighborhoods.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's from this outfit here, South Crestwood Gardens. I get a lot of spam from them.
That's the next door neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on this side care to speak? See no hands? Anyone on this side care to speak? Yes, ma'am?
My name is Heather Stiles. I live at 9740 Greenview Drive.
Thank you.
And I would like to propose changing the chicken ordinance to having 8 or more chickens. I've been doing a lot of research. We have a lot of food sensitivities in our household, and so we've been raising our own chickens and using the eggs, and it has been a big asset for us, but we do not have enough chickens to have enough eggs, or we don't have to purchase them anymore. And by raising it to 8, we would be able to do that. Even 7 would be helpful. I've done a lot of research, and 12 neighboring areas, 9 of them have an unlimited number. 2 of them allow 8, and then 1 of them allows 8 to 12 based on how much land you have, but the minimum, like you can have 8 no matter what. So I'd just like to propose, I know in the past, 5 was possibly because of the areas around us, but I have also sent the list of the neighboring areas to my aldermen, so they have that as well. But I would propose that the number would be raised to 8. It would be a big benefit to our family. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Anyone else on this side care to speak? Yes, sir.
Can I speak on the earlier topic again?
I'm sorry?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can speak on anything.
I just wanted to, again, Randy Strady, 8680 Party Lane. 3 things that came up when we were talking earlier that alarmed me. First of all, you guys were provided a map from MSD today that those 2 small lots next to me, they had a line that said, this side residential, this side commercial. And it's showing those 2 lots on the commercial side, okay? And what Mr. Roberts just said is that those are going to be sold in the open market. I'm hoping he's working on incomplete information or old information, because my understanding was that those were going to be offered to the city. If the city didn't want them, then they would go on auction. Okay, so the discussion then went on to say, oh, there's a possibility and even a probability they'd be rezoned commercial, and that's alarming to me. That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay.
And then the other thing was, I think, Alderman McGuell, you just got your answer from Mr. Batch, that the brick house that you were inquiring about, he has acquired as part of the negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir? How are you?
Hi.
Good.
Jason Denny, 9211 Queenston. I wanted to talk to you about the pool hours item that's on your consent agenda this evening. As Alderman Walk said, it's supposed to save the city $8,200. But I asked that the board give this some discussion tonight. I know that the plan is to go from, I think, 12 to 7, weeknights, Sunday through Thursday, and keep it open until 8 on Friday and Saturday. One thing I'd like to see the board consider is opening the pool a little earlier. Talking with lots of families that have younger children over the years, especially with the aquatic center since we built it. A lot of kids, young kids still take naps in the afternoon, 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2. And when the pool opened at 12, it really wasn't worthwhile to come to the pool for, say, an hour. I know there is tot time on Tuesday and Thursday mornings through the course of the summer, but then you have to leave the pool. You pay an additional fee, and then you have to leave for, I believe, at least an hour or so for the pool to reopen. What I would ask the board to kind of explore is if it's possible if the pool could open at 11 on weekday mornings. And I know you've got swim team and swim lessons to accommodate. I think swim team starts at 7, and swim lessons, at 9 or 10, and usually go till a little after 11. Maybe they could adjust those hours that lessons could be over by 11. And I'd ask that the pool still be open till 8, but I do understand that attendance between 7 and 8 is pretty thin, and I do get that. But if the board and the Parks Board and management would perhaps explore ways to increase attendance and thus the revenue of the pool, and also looking at expanding the hours on the weekend, perhaps as early as 10 or 10:30. If you look at some of the neighboring aquatic centers, such as Sunset Hills, they open at 11:30 every morning. They open at 11 on the weekends. Kirkwood opens at 10 on the weekends, and they stay open until 7. Webster as well opens at 10. So the swim team and swim lessons is not an issue, at least on Saturday and Sundays. And that might be a way that we could perhaps generate a larger attendance and more revenue at the pool. I ask the board take that item off the consent agenda tonight and have some discussion before voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side care to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Jeff Winkler. I live at 8701 Party Lane. I just wanted to say that it's really sad to see what's happening down on Party Lane. I've lived there a long time. My grandparents built the house in the early 50s, and I've seen all the changes. MSD has done this project in our backyard. Our backyard is where the 3 pipes go into the one main sewerage station. And it seems like about every 15 years they're tearing up the backyard, trying something new. They didn't really give us a lot of information before this project was almost in the works. I just don't feel that they gave us a lot of information, gave us any kind of a notice. I feel bad for Randy. He's really in a hard spot. I know they plan on me getting out of there, and I'm right in the middle of everything, but I'm not going anywhere. I love it where I live. I got a great place. Now I've got a 5-foot manhole cover in my backyard, which I've never had there before. But now, 5-foot, big concrete manhole cover right in my backyard. I don't know if it's temporary. They never said anything about putting there. We've called them a couple times to ask them. They can't give us a direct answer if it's temporary until the tanks get in. Then they're going to take those and put them back in the ground. We can't get any information. So I would just like you guys to know that, and also that if they could close the street, that would be great, because we get a lot of traffic through there, a lot of people driving very fast. They used to take radar on the street quite a bit. Doesn't seem like they do that much anymore.
So you'd support that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Speed bumps, and anything to cut the traffic down there. But I just want to let you guys know that this MSD project is they haven't been really on the up and up as far as letting all the neighbors kind of know what's going on with that before the project, before they knew what they were doing. So thank you.
We appreciate your comments, sir. Thank you so much. Anyone else on this side care to speak? Yes, sir.
Ismail Ayouaz, 8915 was the name.
Would you speak up, please?
Ismail Ayouaz, 8915 was the name. Sorry, I get the flu, so. Just wanted to follow up with Jason. What he said is absolutely true. I posted on Facebook, social media, about that issue of changing the hours for the pool. And I had 94 comments from people going from we need to open the pool earlier, to changing the pricing, to having so extended hour, the pricing, opening the pricing also for the Lindbergh residents. I mean, many issues. People are very passionate about that issue, and I think it's worth for some of you to take a look at those comments. Again, 94 comments from different people, and the community is very passionate about that issue. So I think that's the right move to take this from the consent agenda tonight and maybe reach out to the community and see what the community wants to do with the pool. But clearly that's an issue that people feel passionate about it. So I encourage you to take a look at those comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this side care to speak? See no other hands. Okay, so that will end public comment. Alderman Miguel, did you have?
I have a couple of questions of some of our speakers. For Mr. Winkler and for Mr. Badge.
This public comment.
I understand, but I have some questions on the comment, on their comments. Thank you. Mr. Winkler mentioned that there's a 5-foot-high manhole in his backyard. I walked the neighborhood over the weekend as well as driving. While walking it, I observed 3 of those 5-foot cylinders. They must be 4 feet in diameter. I don't, I'm just guessing there. But I guess I had never noticed them before, and I was asking myself, how could I be so blind? But apparently they've just gone up, and why they're there, they seem to be pretty much headed towards the creek as they go across 3 different properties. Mr. Winkler, you decided that not to take their buyout offer.
That's correct.
Was it a fair offer, or did you just want to stay?
The house has a lot of sentimental value, and I believe that it was a low offer.
Okay. And Mr. Batch, you mentioned, you said you're now and apparently Mr. Strady seemed to confirm, you said you're the owner of 8711?
Yes.
And that was part of the negotiation? Your negotiation with MSD?
Well, for the 2 lots that they had on the threat of eminent domain, we negotiated to take 2 other lots and funds and make it happen. But, you know, they haven't offered anyone on my side, which is Randy's side, anything. They haven't even talked to us about our properties.
Okay.
And also my vacant lot, which I plan on building a $500,000 home there, is now devalued. They haven't addressed that issue either.
And you said that house on 8711 is in the floodplain?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Well, the 100-year floodplain is the elevation of about 517 over there, and they claim the house is about a foot in the floodplain, even though it's never flooded, ever. You know, that's FEMA. That's not just MSD, that's FEMA.
So the expectation is that that property would flood once every 100 years.
Right.
Is that?
Right.
Okay. And as a result of that, is your intention to level that house?
No, MSD is going to level the house. And then I'll fill the lot with a Clomar and a Lomar, and then it'll be a usable lot for a new home.
Oh, so you can raise the elevation and make use of that property? I see. Okay, that helps me understand. The cost of moving the RBN house, I thought that cost was going to be absorbed by MSD.
Well, that was part of the negotiations.
So that is included in the negotiation, the cost of moving. So the onus is on MSD to move it, and they're going to pay the bills on the move.
You can look at it that way. I mean, the house has
Okay.
value either way, so.
Got it. Okay, very good. Well, that helps me understand the situation a little bit better. Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Waller?
No, it's been answered.
Good. All right. Let's move on to old business. I see none. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Any member of the board wishing to remove anything from the consent agenda, do so at this time. Please light your light. Alderman, maybe.
If we could go ahead and poll the discussion concerning the change in the operational hours for the aquatic center.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, anyone else? Okay. In that case, do I have a motion and a second for a first reading?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, do I have a motion and a second for a second reading? Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, would the city clerk please read the titles twice consecutively?
Approval of the January 9th, 2018 regular meeting minutes and appointments to the Board of Directors of Crestwood Point and Crestwood Square Community Improvement Districts as the appointment of Gary Crew to remain Director of the Board of Directors of Crestwood Square CID with term expiring January 18, 2019, replacing the incorrect term expiration of January 18, 2018. The appointment of Greg Roby to remain Director of the Board of Directors of Crestwood Square CID with the term expiring January 18, 2019, fixing the correct term expiration of January 18, 2018. The appointment of William Madelbaum to remain Director of the Board of Directors of the Crestwood Square CID with a term expiring January 18, 2021, fixing the incorrect term expiration of January 18, 2020. The appointment of Chris Simpson to remain Director of the Board of Directors of the Crestwood Square CID with a term expiring January 18, 2021, fixing the incorrect term expiration of January 18, 2020, and the appointment of John Gilfoy as interim Director of the Board of Directors of Crestwood Square CID to serve the remainder of the term dedicated by Rick Jett with a term expiring January 18, 2021, fixing an incorrect term expiration of January 18, 2020. An ordinance approving an annual renewal of the Law Enforcement Services Agreement with Regis Commission for Services and Support and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to take certain actions on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an agreement with Morphotrack, LLC, for use of live scan fingerprinting equipment and of subscription, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said agreement on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an agreement with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly for consulting services for the grant application for the White Cliff Park Lane Bridge reconstruction project, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said agreement on behalf of the city. An ordinance amending ordinance 4603 to authorize a further amendment to the agreement with Big Plumbing Company for additional plumbing services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city. An ordinance amending ordinance 4518 to authorize an amendment to the agreement with Tote Plumbing for additional sanitary sewer lateral repair services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the same on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an amendment to the agreement with Gemma LLC for architectural services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving the purchase of de-icing salt and delivery from St. Louis County Municipal Salt Co-op for a not-to-exceed amount of $18,500. I'll now read the titles of the ordinances for a second time. An ordinance approving annual renewal of the Law Enforcement Services Agreement with Regis Commission for Services and Support, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to take certain actions on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an agreement with Morphotrack, LLC, for the use of live scan fingerprinting equipment and a subscription, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said agreement on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an agreement with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly for consulting services for the grant application for the White Cliff Park Lane Bridge reconstruction project, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said agreement on behalf of the city. An ordinance amending ordinance 4603 to authorize a third amendment to the agreement with Big Plumbing Company for additional plumbing services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city. An ordinance amending ordinance 4518 to authorize an amendment to the agreement with Tote Plumbing for additional sanitary sewer lateral repairs, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving an amendment to the agreement with Gemma LLC for architectural services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the same on behalf of the city. An ordinance approving the purchase of de-icing salt and delivery from St. Louis County Municipal Salt Co-op for a not-to-exceed amount of $18,500.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do I have a motion for second reading?
I just take a roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Take a roll call, please.
Alderman Reed.
Yes.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Stack. Yes. Alderman Sharpton.
Yes.
Alderman Maybe.
Yes.
Alderman Miguel.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy.
Yes.
8 ayes. Consent agenda has passed.
Okay. Alderman Sharpton, did you just, or did you just hit your? Okay, no problem there. Okay, next item on the agenda is items pulled from the consent agenda. And so, Alderman, maybe you're the one that requested that with regard to the what extra hours, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Mr. Denny's comments were spot on a moment ago. I did talk to the city administrator earlier today, and I had a couple residents contact me about this issue. Most people were not particularly concerned about the change that the park board has suggested, that being that Sunday through Thursday, the time be shortened from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m. Most people were not really using the pool during that time period. The people that wanted to stay late generally were using it on a Friday or Saturday. So I actually have no issues with the way this has been presented, but everyone who has weighed in on this, and Mr. Ayu has indicated there was a lengthy Facebook discussion. A lot of people also weighed in on the opinion that, can the pool open earlier, that all of the surrounding pools open earlier, and we're probably dissuading some people from using our pool because of our late opening time, and we're probably forfeiting some concession revenue and things like that, since people are probably eating lunch before they come to the pool, so on and so forth. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Simpson, but I guess the analysis from the park staff was we could open the pool at 11:30 every day, and that was a change that our staff and Midwest Pools thought they could handle.
That's correct. In discussions with Midwest Pools, who provides the lifeguard services in addition to other services, including the aquatic center, they basically said they generally like to have at least 15 minutes in between those morning lessons that tend to end at 11 or 11:15 a.m. To clean up and set up and get ready for regular open of business. So without any significant change to our morning programs, we could easily open at 11:30. And obviously the cost, with the expanded hours, we would have to pay the lifeguards, so there isn't, it's not a no expense change, but with the savings we're realizing from closing a little bit earlier, we could easily absorb the additional half hour with no notable fiscal impact based on what we're currently doing. So if the board is desirous of making broader changes, I'd probably suggest we kick this one back to the park board for further study, because there would be much more shifting around the programs, a little bit more disruption to make that happen. But we could easily do 11:30 a.m. open today.
Sure, and I think that change is kind of a no-brainer. I think that's one we'd want to tackle tonight in conjunction with this shortening. I guess two other thoughts or questions. So our lifeguards are the ones that administer the morning swim lessons, and my kids have done the lessons there the last 4 years, I guess. And I understand the lifeguards are hourly employees, but when they're there from, call it 9:30 to 11:15, working the lessons, and then our pool opens at noon. I mean, I assume most of our lifeguards are not driving home for 45 minutes. So do they just stand around and hang out and we don't pay them, or is it considered like a break or something? We are paying them?
I don't know. Eileen, can you speak to that?
On?
Yes.
Normally they do cleaning, and a lot of the times guards that do lessons aren't necessarily the guards that guard that day.
Okay.
So they're usually more specialized, so they tend to bring them in for lessons and they go home. But there are some that actually stick around, that's their cleaning time. So having that 15 minutes is vital to getting, obviously, people out of the park, and then getting everything cleaned up from the people that were there in the morning.
Okay, very good. And then the second question, I think Mr. Denny proposed it, and I wrote it down. I thought it seemed like a good idea. Do we do Saturday morning lessons, or is there an opportunity on Saturdays and Sundays to open the pool at 11, and then we'll have the pool open at 11:30 Monday through Friday?
When I looked at this earlier today, we were actually going to push some of our programs to start earlier so we could be done by 11:30. Saturday morning, we're going to have an Aqua Zumba class. Sorry, I brought my class over here. That was scheduled to be done at 11. I'd have to talk to the instructor to see if we could push her back 15 minutes. I mean, that's all we have to do.
Okay.
I think that would probably be doable. She is a Crestwood resident, so it's not like just very far.
Okay, and then.
But that's the only class we have on Saturday mornings.
And is there anything on Sunday mornings, or probably not with church services?
Yeah, nothing on Sundays.
Okay. I'll make a motion at the conclusion of the discussion, but I guess I'd like to hear the rest of the board's thoughts on opening the pool at 11:30 during the week. Definitely 11 on Saturdays, and either 11 or 11:30 on Sundays.
Any other board members wish to comment on that? Alderman Kennedy?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of the those changes. I think that's a smart move by going from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock. It cuts costs. The pool's got low attendance then, and then I think opening up earlier for the families, I think it's a smart idea. I like the idea of being there and then having opportunities for the concessions. I think that's another positive move, so I'd be in favor of those changes.
Okay. Alderman Anderson.
I too would be in favor of the changes. I think anything that would have a tendency to enhance the use of the aquatic center would be a good thing, and so I think that's a wise move. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Alderman, maybe did you wish to?
Sure. I'll make the motion that we adopt the Parks Board recommendation that the Aquatic Center close an hour earlier Sunday through Thursday, so close at 7 p.m. rather than 8 p.m., but that the pool opening change from noon to 11:30 Monday through Friday and 11 a.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Second. So from Friday and Saturday, you want it to be what time?
Saturday, Sunday, the pool would open at 11 in the morning. During the week, it would open at 11:30, and then the closing time would be, per the Parks Board recommendation, the pool would stay open late Friday and Saturday till 8 o'clock as it is now, and then Sunday through Thursday, it would close an hour earlier at 7 instead of 8.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Okay. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay. Motion passes. We didn't have a,
ordinance.
Yeah, we didn't have an ordinance. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is new business. Discussion of security requirements for gun stores. Whose topic was this?
So this was an item that was previously raised by Alderman Kennedy at a prior Board of Aldermen meeting. He asked the city staff to do some research into whether other municipalities have special security requirements for gun stores. We did contact a couple of our neighboring communities, and there were no such requirements that we learned of. Alderman Kennedy requested that we bring the item back up for discussion, and so here we are.
Okay. Alderman Kennedy, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thanks. I want to just maybe summarize why this issue I think is important, and I'll make maybe a recommendation after I get a little background. But back in November 27th, that's when the Southern Armory was broken into, middle of the night. They basically broke the glass in the front door, got in, were stealing some rifles, were leaving quickly, and just happened at the time some Harbor Freight employees were doing, I think, inventory or something, and the robbers saw them, and they were the Harbor Freight people were on the phone calling 911, and the robbers fired 3 shots at them. Luckily, nobody was injured. I think, what Alderman Charbonneau mentioned in his report was, a very positive report from the police department. That's great. I think Crestwood is is safe and all that's great. But I think we want to be as proactive, not reactive. I think this discussion is a lot different if one of the employees at Harbor Freight was shot. I think these robbers have demonstrated they would commit murder to avoid arrest, and that concerns me. So I think having some type of visual deterrence is something we should consider. So I would, I asked, and I think it was Alderman Maybe suggested that the Alderman meeting to have staff kind of look at what other municipalities might be doing where there's high value target retail centers, such as selling, armed weapons. And so I appreciate some of the legwork that's been done and some of the response that has been brought back about there's really no special zoning ordinances or requirements at some of the neighboring municipalities that you look at. And what I'd like to do, I would like just to ask one more time that maybe take a little bit more time and explore a little deeper, find out, maybe do a little bit deeper dive. And some of the municipalities that you looked at, I don't think they even sell weapons. And I don't want to put a big burden on them, but I think this is an important issue. And so I would like the staff to take a little more time, look at a few more cities in the surrounding area, and find out if really just make sure we understand what anybody else is doing. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing something different, if we feel it's important. But I'd like to just have a little bit deeper dive into what the other cities are doing and report back. And then from that point, we can maybe have open that discussion one more time. So that's what I would recommend.
Alderman Sharman?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that I think is very important as we move possibly forward with this discussion. Southern Armory did have precautionary measures to prevent this, but the glass, the special type of glass, they actually have a mechanism to lock the rifles. The thieves found a flaw in that, were able to break that as well. And from my understanding, my knowledge, that they've taken additional preventative measures in fixing that mechanism. But I think a couple things that are extremely important to note about this incident. The weapon that was fired was not stolen from the gun store. So that means these individuals had that weapon in their possession, were willing to use that weapon, whether that be robbing a gun store or they just felt like shooting it at some point for whatever reason someone interfered. So I think that is extremely important to keep in mind, that that weapon was not stolen from the gun store and then used at the individuals calling the police department. So that's important to note. I think the other thing that's very important to note, that this seems to be professional criminals. These are not just some people that decided, we're going to go get some guns this evening. They clearly knew what they were doing. There's possible, but I've seen news media reports that there's at least connections believed to one, if not two other, possibly up to 5 or 6 gun stores throughout the area. So I think these are individuals that are professional. I'm not sure what city staff is going to find that's much more preventable. Crime is always going to happen no matter what we try to do, per se, to prevent it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to prevent crime, obviously, but I don't know how much. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you look at the just to answer Alderman Kennedy's questions, as he mentioned, possibly looking at other areas? Could you kind of give us a rough idea of the extent that the city looked at as far as neighboring communities? Was it just surrounding? Was it St. Louis area? Was it Missouri, other states?
Chief Arnold did the bulk of the research. I don't recall exactly which cities. Chief, would you mind reminding us? And while his microphone's booting up, I also sent an email out to the email listserv that all the city managers are on. Responses can be hit or miss on that one, where maybe some people just miss it or they're busy so they don't respond. But generally, people are pretty good. You can expect 15 to 20 responses if something is common or something is happening. And I have no responses, and that has, city managers all across the region, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. So that there were no responses, that nobody had anything, from my perspective, is telling. Chief?
City of Sunset Hills, the City of Kirkwood, and we did not receive a response back from the City of Webster Groves.
So we contacted our immediate neighbors directly as well.
Okay, I guess I'm not going to be opposed if we do a little more contacting of surrounding communities and counties, but I personally don't know how much more preventable that could have been unless they were caught. And from my knowledge from the police, and I didn't go into detail, but oddly enough, that car matched the description. We were pretty sure that that they were there earlier that evening, possibly to commit the crime, but one of our officers was in an adjacent lot, and it may have scared them off. So they had pure intent to do this, and I don't know how much we can do as a city that was truly going to prevent a possible type of robbery other than outlawing a store. And I don't think that's a step we should take. So I'm fine with expanding the search a little bit further in the community, but I don't want the city, when we have other issues, spend too much time on this to regulate profitable, successful business in Creston. And that's all.
And in addition, I did a manual search of the Chesterfield, Maryland Heights, and Baldwin municipal codes on top of those.
Okay. There really isn't much that you can do, and I think that the chief will agree that when you've got the weapons locked up in a secured cabinet inside your facility, and you have alarms on your building, even if they break the glass and they get in, if those secured areas are not able to be penetrated, they're really wasting their time. Yeah, you could put a grate over the whole front of the building, but then they'll find another way to get in. They'll break through the back wall or pull a back steel door off of the frame, or whatever. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. So there are only a couple of things that you could do that are going to be effective. And the gun store owner and I have talked, and I know the chief has had conversations with him. We have a police officer that works part-time there, and so he's gotten plenty of feedback from people on what to do. And I guess the only other way our officers could have responded any quicker would have been if they'd had a direct line from his alarm system to our police dispatcher, and that would have made it maybe a little quicker. But he's done, I think, everything that he possibly can do without making it look like East St. Louis. So, Alderman, maybe did you wish to comment?
Sure, just briefly, Your Honor. I think I would agree with Alderman Kennedy and Alderman Charbonneau that I wouldn't mind having staff take one more crack at this, and rather than, when it comes to things like, hey, who allows chickens, or, what's the zoning regulation on this, it's valuable to look at your neighbors, certainly Sunset, Webster, Kirkwood, Fenton. I mean, that's the group we're looking to a lot of times, but I think Kirkwood has a gun store. I don't believe Sunset Hills does, and so looking at a city that doesn't have a gun store for their code on gun store regulations probably isn't helpful. There may not be any. With respect to Southern Armory, I think is a valued business in the city. I'm confident that that business owner has taken remedial measures to where I'm sure he's above and beyond anything we would even consider passing. So I'm not as worried about that location, but we have retail vacancies in the city. We have new businesses opening up, and so if a subsequent owner wants to open a gun store and comes along, it doesn't seem it seems prudent to have some kind of minimum regulation, to the extent that, I don't know if insurance companies have recommended policies and procedures, but I think it's worth staff taking just another look at this. And if we're recognized as a city where the stores are secure, or as secure as reasonable for the situation. Obviously, if someone wants to drive a bulldozer through a wall or something, I mean, you can't prevent that. But it'd be nice to have the kind of people who are looking to intentionally rob gun stores not drive through Crestwood. So I wouldn't mind having staff take one more crack at this.
Okay. Chief?
Just as a point of clarification, besides gun stores, we also asked them about jewelry stores. They're a little more common as a retail business, and the answer was the same. They had no special requirements for either gun stores or jewelry stores.
I believe that Tom down at the Crestwood Jeweler said the cost of the damage that they did was more than what they stole. So.
And just, I guess, as some consideration, since we're discussing this in a little bit more length, one issue with establishing minimum standards is then that probably becomes the standard. You might have a business locate here and say, well, I do the minimum standards, and they don't do anything else that goes above and beyond. And that's an issue that you have to at least consider. The other is, if we make it a zoning requirement, then existing businesses are going to be grandfathered in as a pre-existing non-conforming use, which means in the case of Southern Armory, if we say you have to have, bulletproof doors and metal this and that and everything, it's still not going to apply to them. It's going to apply to the next gun store, or when they make a change substantial enough that we can put those requirements down. So it's just a consideration, I guess, if we take this further.
Okay.
Alderman Miguel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did an alarm go off when the glass was broken at Southern Armory?
Chief, do you know?
I believe that it did, but we're already getting 911 calls from the people in Harbor Freight.
There you
so
go.
The alarm wasn't as big a factor as where we'd have had an offense where there wasn't a witness to it. So we're already getting it by telephone from the employees before the alarm would have even sounded.
And I think that's one of the problems that we have. If anybody's had any relationships or any issues, incidents with 911, tell us, Chief, how those calls are directed. They go into 911.
It's done geographically, and I'm assuming they picked up the phone in Harbor Freight and dialed 911. That goes to a switching station that says that's a Crestwood address, and it rings the phone in the police department.
Okay. So it's not an instantaneous situation. It does take some time.
Seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking any length of time. I mean, it's if you pick up the phone and call it, it rings almost instantaneous.
Okay. So you're no longer talking to a 911 operator?
No, it does it geographically, and it would tie Harbor Freight's address to an address that we should get, and it sends it to it. It doesn't even go, it does it all electronically through the central office in Webster and sends it to us in seconds.
Okay.
That.
Good. Thank you.
My question was, when the glass was broken, did an alarm?
Yes.
Did that set off an alarm?
Yes.
It did set off an alarm. And the thieves were able to, from that point, they were able to get to where the guns were located and somehow break the lock for that.
They pulled it out from the bottom. It took all of what, 45 seconds, Chief?
I'm not exactly sure how long. The difference between 911 and an alarm company are we're comparing apples and oranges. If the glass breaking alarm went off, that goes to a center somewhere in the country where an operator has to acknowledge it, look up that that's Southern Armory, and it needs to go to the Crestwood Police. They then dial the Crestwood Police, and we pick it up on a 10-digit phone number system. So between 911 and the alarm systems notoriously have a certain amount of delay in them, considerably more than what you would get as if you picked up your phone and dialed 911.
It would have been quicker if they had just dialed the police dispatcher direct?
The nice thing with doing 911 is we get the address and everything right off the bat.
Okay.
Either one would have worked fine. 911, we get the address and the business name, and all of that comes up on the display.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I guess my comment is that whoever did this apparently knew beforehand how long it was going to take them once they broke the window.
I'm not sure I would make that connection. These are thieves that are hell-bent on stealing things. They aren't paying attention to alarms. They're going in to steal the guns, and if they got in there and found they had something that they couldn't defeat, they'd have left with the window broken out with no guns. These guys aren't looking, trying to calculate that if it's an ABF alarm, it's going to take 3 minutes to get to the dispatch center, or if it's CDA, it's going to take a minute and a half. They're not that into this. They're into take a rock, break the window out, see what we can steal, and get out of there.
Well, obviously there were two flaws with the system. The unbreakable glass did break, and the lock didn't lock. And to me, there's something lacking there. One question I would ask is, what does Walmart sells guns? Do they not? What does a Walmart what do they do to protect their firearms or their ammunition?
I don't know, I've never worked there.
I can't speak to Walmart. Most of them are 24 hours, so the store's open all the time. I'm sure they have some sort of a secure system that they lock that up when there's not somebody back in sporting goods. But you can't blame Southern Armory for a issue with their gun securing system that they had never found until this incident. Once this incident occurred, then it's like they looked at it and they made corrections to it that day. Okay. As far as breaking out glass, you can get as resistant a glass as you'd like, and there are still certain weaknesses to it, and if you want in bad enough, you're probably going to get through it.
Well, it troubles me that thieves can, with regularity, get through the apparent safeguards. So, to me, that's maybe a national concern, not just a local concern. Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Charbonneau.
I was just going to bring up, I don't think it was unbreakable glass. I think it was resistant. And one, national retailers like Walmart do sell guns. They just choose the areas in which they do so because of probably crime, things like that. And they're usually behind a relatively, what I would say, if you really wanted one, you could probably get in without anybody knowing. I was at Bass Pro Shops over the weekend, and there was some firearms on display where you could probably get if you really wanted to. It just goes back to crime is crime for a reason, because if it was completely 100% preventable and we lived in a utopia and everything was perfect, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But the fact is, and with the rampant opioid and drug problem in this country, individuals are trying to steal anything from their neighbors to stores. It doesn't matter, to get their fix, and they don't care about society as a whole. and trying to make things, live in an environment that is safe. They don't care about that. All they care about is getting the next fix. So I go back to, I don't have a problem if the city wants to maybe explore possibly in some of these other stores that were broken into and see if the city's had ordinance, but I think the city administrator made a great point. We're fortunate that we have a company in Crestwood that cares about the community, that has been involved with the community events and supports our police officers and gives back to the community and doesn't believe in the minimum standard. If we put a minimum standard on something, then that's what we're going to get from somebody along the line. And then things could be worse. I'm fine with exploring this a little bit further, but I really do think that there are other more pertinent items that the city should be focused on. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Ramsey, let's wrap it up.
Yep. Staff's looking into this. I thought, looking back, when there was that rash of gun store robberies, which Alderman Charbon is right. I mean, the drug problem is massive. Guns are, able to be resold. I thought some of the stores that either were not robbed or the one that the robbers attempted to get in and couldn't had some kind of metal grate or gate behind the glass. And I would just think if you are a casual street criminal and you see that, you're moving on to an easier target. And, you think back to Crestwood Mall when it was open, you walk around at closing time and you have stores that are selling things a lot less valuable than guns, putting down, steel grates in front of clothing stores. And, with Jamestown and Chesterfield Mall in the state they're in, we could probably get some of those grates for really cheap. So, that's all good.
All right. That concludes that. You have some feedback. Okay, next item is introduction of bills or future issues. Alderman Statter.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just like to request that perhaps on our next meeting we add discussion on raising the number of hens as Mrs. Stiles requested. She did send me a full list of 12 local communities, and their limits that I'd be happy to pass along. I would normally ask that we send this to Public Works and have them make a recommendation, but apparently she went to them first and they sent her to us. So I'm not sure if it's something that we want to send back to them and ask for a recommendation, or if we want to discuss it here amongst ourselves.
Adam, is that not in the zoning code?
We just changed it not long ago.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it hit chapter. If it hit chapter 26, then it's going to be B and Z, but if it's a different chapter,
No, we changed it, I want to say 18 months to 2 years ago, and it came through Public Works as a recommendation, and the board upped it from 3 to 5.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay.
Alderman Wallach.
Yeah, I had brought this up about a year ago. Just in regards to the fence variances for our residents. In light, again, it was a Big Ben and Sanders location. I just think there's some inequity in regards to the cost that we charge our residents for this variance. That cost that we charge our residents now is $500 for a fence. In particular, that resident, the cost of the fence that they had installed was $3,700. And we charge them $500 for that. That's roughly 13%. Sometimes residents look at the dollars and cents of it, doesn't make economic sense to proceed with a project. And, 2 meetings ago, we did it with the fire inspections. Again, they formulate their inspections based upon the size of the property or the quality, size of the contract price. And I just think it's inequity in regards to the price that we charge our residents for a variance for the fences. Not only that, I've got data from the last 5 years from the Board of Adjustment, and they've approved of every one of them. And that tells me a couple of things. One is we need to change the variant, that we need to change the code as it reflects into the fences, or we simply pull that fence variance out for the residents, pull it to a board, to a committee. Because when we do have the Board of Adjustments, there's charges. We have our attorney review. We have, it's no different than our new hearing process. So there's charges that we incur from the city. And I believe that if we pull that as it relates to the residential, as it relates to the Board of Adjustment for fences only for residential, we pull it to a committee. and we leave it in there for commercial because the price for the fences for the commercial aspect is going to be cost per. It should be in line with any variances for commercial property. And what I would recommend also that for new subdivisions that it also stays in the Board of Adjustment for variances. But I think it's for the best interest of the residents. Because of the cost, $500, which I think is excessive as it relates to the fence, that it should be pulled back to the committee. I checked the pair. They do have a exception.
Point of order. Let me cut you off, but this is for an issue. You have an issue you want to discuss, let's just state your issue. We'll put it on a future agenda and we'll discuss it, but I don't think we need to be dragging the entire issue through the discussion tonight.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, my only thing about the city of DePere, they only charge the residents $50 for their exceptions. So again, I think this is inequity. So I would like to have that up for discussion. The other thing that came up too recently, I had a buddy of mine that lives in the city of St. Peter's. They have a program where they have a water service line repair program. Very similar application to sewer lateral line, but they have it to water service line. Where it's damaged, they went to with the voters in 2012. They actually charge them $12 for that. And again, if your lateral line for the water is broken from the house to the hookup, it's actually is paid for by this program. Again, it came into play in regards to the recent because of the freezing issues that we had, and a friend of mine indicated again it saved him $3,000 for that job, and they actually because the city residents wanted that program. And maybe for the staff, are you aware of any lateral lines that were damaged by homeowners that had some effect in regards to their water lateral line that was damaged, and may have, if this program wasn't effective, would have provided them relief?
I don't know, Jim, do you know of any instances? One instance.
Okay. Then it may not be a worthwhile program, but again, it's maybe something I will go ahead and table right now. But if anyone wants to look at it, again, City of St. Peter's, their residents approved with a $12 annual charge, which is the same application as a sewer lateral line, but again, it was an offer the residents voted on and approved of, and it doesn't sound like there's that much of a concern here, but the concerns that we had with clay pipes for the sewer lateral because of the failures, that's why it passed, so I don't know if we had the same issue with the water lateral lines as it connects to the main lines.
I'll look into it, Alderman. One factor that might be differentiating us from St. Peter's, though I'll have to check, but if I recall correctly, St. Peter's operates its own water utility, and that might be why they're able to offer such a program.
Right. Okay.
I'll look into it.
All right. Thank you.
My guess is that would have to be an issue put before the voters, just like the sewer lateral.
Right.
And so you're proposing an additional tax to cover potential.
I'm going to hold. Apologize. I will hold off on that until Chris can provide us more information.
All right. Alderman Baby.
I have one future issue, I guess just super briefly. I could be wrong, I guess as Chris is looking into it. I thought Missouri American Water had a lateral program for St. Louis County. I could be totally wrong on that, but it might be worth checking with the water company on that. And then on I know I just got added to the Public Works Board earlier this year. With respect to Alderman Statter's request on the hens, I guess my inclination, but I'll leave it up to the city administrator, would be that should start at the committee level and hear testimony, make a recommendation. I don't recall that formally coming before them. I don't know if if they just talk to one person on the board and they're like, don't bother. So I guess I'd want to know the background on that. I'm open to the idea, but I just think that's one of those things that we should absolutely use our new committee system for and vet it that way. And then my new issue would be if we could get a report from staff, not time sensitive, not especially time sensitive. I'm thinking in the March-April timeframe on the ownership and maintenance responsibility of the drainage right-of-way near Capelia and Grant Park in Ward 3. There's been some recent correspondence exchanged with MSD about that. And then secondarily, beyond the ownership and maintenance responsibility, if staff can investigate whether any of our current ordinances are being violated due to MSD's lack of maintenance of that right-of-way. And thirdly, if the lack of maintenance is not running afoul of any of our current ordinances, are there new ordinances we need to adopt to protect the 25 or so residences that border that right-of-way, that drainage right-of-way? Thank you.
Alderman Charbonneau?
Yes, Your Honor. I was going to actually move for a 5-minute recess and adjournment if there was no other line. I'm sorry, moving to closed session. I was going to move if there are no additional lights to a 5-minute recess and then reconvene in closed session.
Okay. City clerk, wish to read the closed session notice? Huh?
Is there a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Yeah. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay.
Roll
City
call.
clerk.
The Board of Aldermen is scheduled to meet this evening in closed session immediately following this meeting in order to discuss matters in accordance with Missouri Revised State Statutes 610.0211. In order to adjourn to closed session, there needs to be a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
Roll call.
He's making the
I'm sorry.
motion.
Yeah, motion.
So moved.
Okay. Roll call.
Alderman Breeding,
Yes.
Alderman Wallach,
Yes.
Alderman Statter,
Yes.
Alderman Charbonneau,
Yes.
Alderman Maybe,
Yes.
Alderman McGowan,
Yes.
Alderman Anderson,
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy.
Yes.
We are now adjourned to recess.